inspiration. Eric, you're my inspiration. You all are my inspiration. I come here for my therapy. Because we need a world that makes sense. We need a world that's going to work for all of us. An America in a world that works for all of us. And that is the only way we're going to get out of here alive, if we make it work for everybody. And, this is what democracy looks like. And it is so exciting. We've just come, this is like stop number 10 or 12, I think, in our Whirlwind California tour. Wow. And you would think that, the election is over. But you never know it, because it's like people are just waking up and people are standing up, and there is just so much energy out there. We were up in Humboldt County at the State University there, and they had to turn away 500 people that night, and that's kind of the way it's been all up and down the coast, and it's so exciting to see that we are rising up strong, and we are rising up green. All right. So it was Humboldt, it was Davis, Bakersfield, meeting with Luis Rodriguez. I don't know if you know Luis, who is an amazing poet and activist, Green Party candidate for governor some years back. We met with him and his wonderful family. We were at UC Irvine at Riverside earlier today, and a little side trip along the way to go down to Austin, Texas for the South by Southwest Film Festival, where there's actually a movie about Sherry Honkala at the South by Southwest Film Festival by her son, who was like homeless with Sherry, who grew up to be a filmmaker, now making movies about this ongoing struggle. So there's just such a wake-up going on. It is so exciting. And today, I don't know if you heard the news yet, but Muslim ban 2.0 was just stopped today. Because what they do in a court of law has everything to do with what we are doing in the court of public opinion. So this is the way forward. And as Mark Bartlett was saying earlier, and what an awesome group that is, People Over Profit, that they just got started less than a year ago, is like just astonishing that they've established such a force for good, is really amazing. And what he's doing, and he mentioned that we have, we're the ones who are setting the agenda. And I want to just underscore that. We see this today in the defeat of the Muslim ban. We also see this in news today that the legislature in Utah just passed ranked choice voting. Second state to pass a statewide voting system that actually liberates our votes so we can lead with our values instead of our fears. As many of you know, Donald Trump, he didn't really win the election because he actually lost the popular vote, and we need to get rid of this archaic electoral college that was established for slave states, essentially, to boost their power. So we shouldn't have this voting system to start with, but there are obvious no-brainer reforms like ranked choice voting, which means you can go into the polls and instead of with the question in your mind, who do I hate the most, and who am I most afraid of, which was the question on the minds of a lot of voters, and the majority of Trump's voters were not actually voting for him. Polls showed consistently throughout the election, right up to the very end, the majority of Trump voters were not for Trump. They were against Hillary Clinton and the centrist Democrats and how they have thrown people under the bus. So we need to be able to liberate our values and our vision. Democracy needs a moral compass. We have to lead with what it is that we want. And why should we be intimidated? Why should we be fear campaigned and smear campaigned about spoilers who are, spoiling the election by providing a real solution and a real way forward. The abolition movement, they were also called spoilers when they got political and actually created the Republican Party, which won as an independent third party. They started coming up as the so-called spoiler party. Anyhow, ranked choice voting is where we need to go. It lets you rank your choices. So if your first choice loses, your vote is automatically reassigned to your second choice. So there's no splitting of the vote, there's no throwing your vote away. These are the kinds of things that we need, and it's really exciting that for the very first time a state legislature, and I think it's a Republican legislature actually in Utah, that passed ranked choice voting. It's very cool because you know what happened in California? I don't know if you know about this, but the legislature had passed an enabling legislation to allow cities and towns to use ranked choice voting, and Governor Brown vetoed that bill in order to stop ranked choice voting from taking hold. And in every other city where it's passed, and it's in lots of cities, and now in the state of Maine as well, it's passed by voter referendum. Because we stand up and we say, we're not going to have a voting system that's based on fear. We're going to have a voting system that's based on our values. You've got to be able to vote for what you're for. If you can't do that, then all hope is lost about actually moving forward. We got to start with our vote. So ranked choice voting, blocking the Muslim ban for the second time, looking around at other countries. You know what just happened in South Korea. In South Korea, they just got rid of their president based on corruption and millions of people getting out into the street to say, we gotta throw the bum out. So I would say, don't underestimate the power of a very large group of people. It's not only South Korea, but in Guatemala 2 years ago, the same thing happened to the Guatemalan president, who basically got thrown out for corruption. And think back to East Germany several decades back. Chris Hedges, shout out to Chris Hedges, the journalist of The Real Truth. He was there in East Germany covering the democracy struggle against this surveillance state, which we know all about nowadays. This hits very close to home. And at the time, the democracy advocates were saying, you couldn't travel outside of the country. There were a lot of things you couldn't do. Now, they also provided 2 weeks of paid vacation. Healthcare is a human right. Education is a human right. I mean, they kind of put us to shame. Nonetheless, they were a surveillance and security state in a way that was very oppressive, and people were all like spying on each other as agents of the government, and they were, really reviled, and they were shooting people who were trying to escape, and all these, really horrible things. The democracy advocates were saying, maybe we'll get somewhere in 10 years. A week later, the wall came down. And what brought that wall down? It was hundreds of thousands of people getting out and saying that they weren't going to take it anymore. So don't underestimate our power to change things. Donald Trump is a minefield of liabilities, of legal, ethical, and constitutional violations. He's got a gazillion court cases against him. There's already a call for impeachment, and even the Republican Party is pretty freaked out at what he is doing, like by removing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Joseph Dunford. And I'm not especially in love with military people, but compared to Stephen Bannon, even the generals are saints. At least they are walking in the real world instead of some parallel alternative universe, or the alternative right. So, even Republicans are really wringing their hands right now about this monster that we've created. Don't doubt for a minute, our power to really change things. Think back to Richard Nixon. What did we accomplish under Richard Nixon? One of the most tyrannical, repressive, corrupt presidents in our history. We got the EPA, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, OSHA, protecting workers' health and safety. We got women's right to choose out of a very conservative Supreme Court. And we brought the troops home from Vietnam. We did that in spite of a very repressive president. And how did we do that? We did that by getting out there and not taking no for an answer. And here's the reason. We knew that our lives were on the line. Our brothers were being sent to die in Vietnam, largely our brothers of color, but not just our brothers of color. A lot of college students, everybody was being drafted back then. You could get deferments for a while, but not necessarily. So we really knew that our lives were on the line. We were out there like our lives depended on it. The circle has gone, 360. We've gone full circle on this right now. Our lives, again, are on the line. From a generation locked into student loan debt. Poverty is a very dangerous thing. There are 500,000 people who die every year in the United States, largely from poverty and also from lack of education, which compounds the problems of poverty. Poverty is a dangerous thing that we need to be fighting against. And our lives are on the line when a generation is locked into predatory student loan debt with no way out. We should be bailing out students like we bailed out the crooks on Wall Street. If we could bail out the guys who crashed the economy instead of bail out the victims of that waste-strong abuse. And let me just tell you quickly how we can do that. We're spending $1 trillion right now on a new generation of nuclear weapons. Do we need a new generation of nuclear weapons? No, we need to get rid of all nuclear weapons. Instead of spending $1 trillion on a new generation of lethal weapons, we should be spending $1 trillion on a new generation of human beings and getting them out of debt and making them economically whole as leaders and actors in our economy. The number of people who are locked into student debt, it's 44 million. The number isn't getting smaller, it's getting bigger because people don't get out of it. Because that jobs recovery, was lousy, low-wage, part-time, insecure jobs that don't allow you to get out of debt, let alone to keep a roof over your head. So that is incredible, ironic power, because 44 million people locked into debt is enough to have won a presidential race, a three-way race, but it's also enough to win virtually any other race at all levels of office. We have the power. If we simply can stand up and use that power, we are absolutely unstoppable. And that power in particular is coming from a generation which is locked into student loan debt right now that we need to liberate. And in fact, we can liberate. So while we're talking about our power, and our power to turn this around, let me just name a few other things that we can do that are actually within our reach right now, like moving that $1 trillion from deadly, outrageous nuclear weapons into liberating a generation of young people. And remember this, that young people have always been the engine of social transformation. And we need that transformation now because our lives, in fact, are on the line. We are really fighting for our lives out there in the street, and that's why we're fighting more powerfully than we have certainly in generations. And our lives are on the line on student debt. They are also on the line on so many other areas as well, like, for example, well, let me add to that first, free public higher education. Let's not make people go into debt to start with. Let's bail people out and let's shut that debt machine down. Free higher education, it pays for itself, so it's absolutely preposterous that we are as a society, not paying for it. How crazy is it to have an economy in which you have to go into debt, lifelong debt, in order to have a fighting chance at surviving in that economy? We paid for high school education throughout the 20th century because you needed a high school degree to survive in the economy. So by extension, in today's economy, you need post-secondary education, whether it is a technical school or a 2-year or a 4-year college. We need higher education to survive in this economy. By extension, we need to be providing that as a basic human right, higher education. And the good news, the really good news is that it pays for itself. Actually, not double, triple, quadruple, 7 times over. For every dollar we put into higher education as taxpayers, we get back 7-fold on our return. So this is something we cannot afford not to do. Plus it means we liberate that generation that will lead us out of this wilderness that we're in right now. It has always taken the younger generation, whether it was the civil rights movement, or the women's movement, or the labor movement for that matter, or the Black Lives Matter movement, or the indigenous movements, elders as well as young people, but in addition, the immigrant rights movement and the incredible bravery of the dreamers and the undocumented who are also unafraid. What inspiring courage we see from the younger generation. The end of the war in Vietnam, this was all about young people getting out and standing up for the future that we deserve. So liberating young people from student debt and from the cost of higher education, it is the gateway issue to solving everything else, because we need that younger generation there leading the charge. So it's absolutely critical. While we're talking about good things that we can do, let me name a couple others. Right now, we're fighting for our lives out there in the streets, not only because of poverty and student debt, also on account of the immigrant rights crisis, obviously, as well. And there, we are making incredible inroads in fighting the Muslim ban, but we also have to fight and continue to fight against deportations. We need not only sanctuary cities and sanctuary campuses, but we need a sanctuary state, and we need a sanctuary nation. Because in fact,
thank you.
The immigration crisis, the most powerful thing we can do, aside from stopping the deportations and creating a welcoming path to citizenship, but we have to stop causing this crisis in the first place. The immigration crisis is a refugee crisis that has everything to do with predatory U.S. policies like NAFTA, which was not only devastating for workers in this country, but especially for farmers and factory workers south of the border. So we have to stop oppressing economies in the so-called developing world. We have to stop this economic colonialism which pervades around the world. We also have to stop the racist war on drugs, which is not only deadly in this country, but is deadly south of the border. Our war against drugs, which is really our war against drugs, is devastating and causing people to flee for their lives over the border. And then add to that our military interventions, our corporate interventions that have basically overthrown democracies south of our border, particularly Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, where the violence just continues for generations. And this is where the majority of recent immigrants in the last decade have come from, fleeing for their lives from the corporate coups like in Honduras, corporate and military supported by us, the death squads that are trained by the United States that have caused such incredible terror and havoc in El Salvador and Honduras as well, and Guatemala. So, the most powerful solution to the immigration crisis is let's just stop causing this crisis in the first place. And from there, or simultaneously, we need that welcoming path to citizenship for the immigrants who have always been at the backbone of our economies, our community, our culture. We need to stand up. We're all immigrants on this bus, with the exception of the Native Americans from whom we stole the land, and the African Americans dragged here in chains, to whom both groups, to whom we owe reparations. Let's do right by our brothers and sisters. I want to mention one other win-win in terms of those really great things. It's like a virtuous circle. It's like the solutions converge and they compound each other in the same way that right now we got all these crises compounding each other. Well, when we start turning them around, we can really begin turning them around in a big way. And the key to all of that is essentially our power and refusing to be divided and conquered one issue at a time. It took me 50 years, by the way, to discover the reason to fight politically. I was apolitical, didn't want to have anything to do with either of the corrupt political parties that were the only political parties I knew of until I was 50 years old, and the Green Party came to me and they said, you know what, just keep doing what you're doing, but call it a political campaign. And I said, well, everything else is failing, might as well try electoral politics. And lo and behold, I discovered that there are a lot of people out there that were feeling exactly how I was, and polls show that, statistics show that. 44% of people stayed home in the last election because they were denied knowledge that there was another way forward, and they were not going to go out and vote for these most disliked, most untrusted candidates in our history that were being shoved down our throats. 76% of voters were screaming to open up the debates. And that's part of what we are also struggling for in the Green Party as part of this battle. We need voters who can vote not only free from fear, but voters who have a right to vote and go to the polls without voter suppression through voter ID laws, and voters who actually have a right to know who they can vote for through open debates. We say enough of this corporate commission on presidential debates. We need a people's debate commission to actually inform the American people. And a political party, to finish that point, is basically where we get together. This is what I sort of learned after 50 years of losing battles on healthcare as a human right, fighting environmental racism, trying to, create jobs, fighting racist redistricting and so on, trying to create jobs that make our communities healthy. We would go present win-win solutions to our legislature. How many have been through the lobbying mill, where you go and you lobby your legislature for good things, right? Well, I don't recommend it, Save yourself 10 or 15 years on that treadmill and just know that it doesn't work unless you happen to have billions of dollars in your pocket. If you can buy your legislation, you're in good shape. Otherwise, they dangle this carrot in front of your nose, and you think you're going to have your bill. Any day now, any year now, they're going to give you your bill, single payer, whatever it is, in some environmental cleanup or, window dressing on a disaster. They'll tell you, just a little far, just get focused. Get everybody to work on this one little bill and forget about everything else. And then they'll change one sentence in that bill and completely, destroy it. So don't go that way. We really need to stand up for what it is we need and not feel like we have to succumb. So, I learned the name of the game is by joining forces. It's by linking arms, because when we join together to put not only people over profit, but planet over profit and peace over profit. So we put it all together as people, planet, and peace over profit. That's what we got to do. We need a really fundamental systemic change that puts an end to this cutthroat, capitalism, this cult of greed, this religion of greed that is being shoved down our throats. We are moral people. We are people with real human values. We are people who are part of a community where we live, a community across the continent, and really a community around the world. American values are fundamentally human values, and we got to stand up together. When we do that in this country, or in this state, when we refuse to be divided and conquered into a gazillion different issues, then we have the critical mass that we need. We have the vision, and we have the solutions that we need, and we're absolutely unstoppable together. That's what we're doing in the Green Party, and that's what took me 50 years to learn, is that real politics, that is not corporate politics, that's not bought and paid for by Wall Street, by predatory banks, by fossil fuel giants, by war profiteers, but people's politics. That's really where our power is, by coming together. In the words of Alice Walker, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We've got it, we're going to use it, and we're going to do that now. One more solution I want to leave you with, and that is to this other crisis that is getting a lot of people out there in the streets and in the country. That is this climate threat, because it is more serious by the day. And about 2 weeks ago, there was a new game changer of a study that was published in the academic journal Geology that basically documented that the permafrost is now massively in meltdown. And for those who don't know about the permafrost, it hasn't been talked about a lot because it was thought of as this thing in the future that we had to worry about, but nobody knew exactly when this would be a problem. So permafrost is where all this old organic debris is frozen. Well, guess what? It's not frozen anymore. It's unfreezing. So this study in northwest Canada showed how you have these gigantic sinkholes, that whole mountains are collapsing because the permafrost is melting. It's 10% of the entire northwest territory of Canada that shows the impact of permafrost melt. That means we're out of time. It means ding, okay, we gotta all do it now. And what we gotta do right now is get rid of fossil fuels, not by 2050, not by 2080, that means now. No new pipeline, none. No new frac sites, none. No more offshore drilling, no new coal plants. We're not bringing any of that back. We're shutting it down, and our lives depend on it. There's nothing to hold back for, folks, because that 10 or 20 feet of sea level rise, which Jim Hansen said could come as soon as 2060, was the near-term date. He gave a span of 100 years, but he said it's more likely to be near than far because of how the science is evolving as we get better at doing these models. So these models did not include the impact of permafrost melt. And permafrost basically releases methane, which is the most powerful greenhouse gas out there. So that means we gotta go for it. It means this is the Hail Mary moment. It means we gotta stand up and make this happen. That means doing this in our communities. It means doing it at the national level. Donald Trump's days are numbered. We just gotta keep doing what we're doing and insisting that our lives depend on this. And here's the solution. We solve the economic crisis at the same time that we solve the climate crisis. When Pearl Harbor was bombed at the start of the Second World War for the United States, we didn't say, oh, we'll mobilize in 10 years, right? And what we're looking at now makes Pearl Harbor look like small potatoes. We are not talking about one harbor, we're talking about all harbors and all coastal population centers. 600 million people will be climate refugees. Right now we have 65 million, and the world cannot handle 65 million refugees. Imagine multiplying that times 10. That's not going to work anyhow. Manhattan is underwater, and Florida, the country of Bangladesh, really all coastal areas. I'm not sure exactly how that plays out on the West Coast, but where you've got coastline and where you got people, you won't have that coastline anymore. So the solution here is an emergency jobs program. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, it took 6 months It took 6 months to transform the economy, unfortunately to a wartime footing from which we have never recovered. It's time to peel back that wartime economy and that fossil fuel economy in one fell swoop, because all of us nations need to do this. It's not just the United States. We need to convert our military budgets into green budgets, and we need to be sponsoring a global Green New Deal. And these friggin' wars for oil anymore. They become obsolete. We don't need that money the minute we move those dollars into actually greening our economies. And so this revives our economy by ensuring everyone has a good wage job that's healthy for you and for the community. We revive the economy. We stop climate change in its tracks. We make the friggin' wars for oil obsolete. And we get so much healthier by getting rid of the fossil fuels and the air pollution in particular, and the water pollution and the cancers and all that derive from fossil fuel chemicals. We get so much healthier that the savings in healthcare alone is enough to pay the cost of the green energy transition. So this is a win-win. This is part of what's within our reach. You know, the people of California recently shut down the San Onofre nuclear power plant. We did that. You did that. We also stopped the privatization of the internet. We also stopped the first bombing campaign of Syria. We did that by mobilizing. They said resistance is futile, and we said no way, no how. We are going to shut this down, and we did. And we are standing up for what it is that we need. And we're standing up through our forming Green Party chapters. If you are at a college, a university, a high school, we need you on the program here to just be that spark that lights the fire where you are, because people are so hungry for a new way forward with integrity and with justice. That's what we're talking about, and I would just love to be working with all of you in building this green network. It means we still work on the social movements, and thank you so much to all the burners who brought so much energy and optimism and power into the Green Party and into our work in the movements together. We build those movements, but we don't just build those movements. We also build this incredibly powerful coalition across the spectrum of justice. We can create an America and a world that works for all of us, that puts people, planet, and peace over profit, and the power to create that world is right here, right now, in our hands. Let's make it so right here in San Diego. Thank you so much.
Hi, Dr. Bill Stein. So stick around. We're going to bring Dr. Stein right back up to answer your questions. I have a very specific task. My name is David Cobb. Y'all sit down. We'll bring Dr. Stein back up, but I want to be very clear. My name is David Cobb. I had the honor of being the campaign manager for Jill and Ajamu. And I think it's interesting that Jill and Ajamu both voluntarily chose to have somebody manage their campaign who told them, I am a straight-up revolutionary. Are you sure you want me to manage this campaign? They said yes. And I am a revolutionary because I believe that we have to restructure society. Like Jill, like I suspect you do. We do not have time to tinker at the margins between the climate crisis, the political crisis, the emerging fascism that is happening in this country. It is time for us to restructure society because the current society is literally destroying the planet that we depend upon for life itself. We have to actually have the courage to say that. And we have the courage to say that not only are we destroying the planet that we depend upon for life itself, we are literally creating a racist, sexist, class-oppressive society with the plunder and pillage of Mother Earth. How am I doing so far? See, that's truth. That's not just speaking truth to power. That's speaking truth truth about power, and the reality is we are going to use our power to restructure this society. I want to be very clear about something. I'm a revolutionary and a Green Party member because I know through the study of history, just like I know that capitalism is emerging into fascism by the study of history and that capitalism is ending, I also know this. To create the systemic social change that I'm talking about, that Jill has talked about, that Mark talked about, that Eric talked about, throughout history, making that change is very simple to describe, very hard to implement. Let me give you the formula for systemic transformational change. Y'all ready? Number one, you must have a mass movement in the streets, in the pool halls, in the bowling alleys, in the beauty parlors, in the barber shops. Everywhere people live, work, and play, they've got to actually be engaged. That movement must be broad, deep, conscious, educated, and militant. And by militant, I mean being willing to disrupt the current system.
Amen.
And step two, you must have an electoral arm of that movement that is running for office at the ballot box, ready to implement the program and the platform of those movements. See, if you have the movement without the electoral arm, you can change people's hearts and minds, but policies stay the same. Honestly, if you have a political party that is not connected to a mass movement, what you have are a bunch of intellectual people at coffee shops having really good conversation. But when they come together, you make systemic change. And let me give you a list of what it took alternative parties connected to movements, what it was that alternative parties championed at the ballot box and did in this country. Y'all ready for this list? Watch this. The abolition of slavery. Women getting the right to vote. The creation of the Social Security Administration, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation laws, pure food and drug laws, ending child labor, the direct election of the United States Senate, the 40-hour work week. For goodness sakes, the entire fabric of what we today consider the bare, damned minimum for a decent and just society, that fabric was literally woven together by alternative political parties. Parties who did their work when they were called naive or unrealistic. Parties who did their work when they were called dangerous un-Americans. And parties who did their work when they were called spoilers. Yeah. See what I did there? So today, if you want to live in a society, not just talk about it or envision it, but literally live in a society that will end war as foreign policy. If you want to live in a society that will create a welcoming path to citizenship for our sisters and brothers across these borders. And by the way, those borders are imaginary lines on the map. The birds don't recognize them, neither do I. If you want to live in a society that will actually transform our economic model to a Green New Deal, to wean ourselves off of coal and oil and nuclear power to sustainable alternative energy, if you want to live in a society that will guarantee access to health care as a fundamental human right, if you want to live in a society that will guarantee meaningful, productive work for all of us, see, if you want to live in that society, I submit to you, you've got to be willing to join and vote for candidates like Dr. Jill Stein and other Green Party members who are campaigning on that world. It's as simple as that. And now, I got to tell you, I got my start in politics by working on Jesse Jackson's campaign in '84 and '88. Y'all, I tell you, I learned a lot during that campaign and those campaigns. As a white person, I learned how to put myself under the leadership of people of color. For the first time in my life. I learned how to build relationships and genuine coalitions between environmentalists and organized labor and women's groups. And I learned about Palestine and foreign policy for the first time in my life. Yes. You know what else I learned? I learned the Democratic Party's presidential primary is where progressive politics goes to die. I also learned this. He said, never insult somebody by not giving them the opportunity to participate in what they obviously believe in. So I see some cups are coming around, so I'm going to stop and ask you, as that comes around, please do not give till it hurts. I hate when a fundraiser says that. I don't want anybody in here to hurt. I also am not going to say give till you feel good, because I hope you already feel good. I hope it does not take either giving or getting money to make you feel good. I got news for you. You live in San Diego. Go outside. It's beautiful here. You got to feel good just for living here. I am going to tell you this. Give till it feels right. Because only you know how much that is. For some of you, it might be a couple of dollars. Others of you, it'll be 10 or 20. Somebody in here could give $1,000. I don't know who you are, but somebody could. Green Party of San Diego will take your check and do the goddess's work with it. The second thing I'm going to do before we bring Jill Stein up, as these donations come in, and please do be generous. Give till it feels right. The second thing that I have been asked and tasked to do is to tell you that if you're, like, we don't know yet whether we're doing a political organizing meeting or leftist entertainment. I hope you've been entertained. But here's the thing, you know how we'll know if we are doing actual political organizing? If you get involved in the Green Party of San Diego. That's when we'll know if you've actually been involved, if we're doing political organizing. And it is my great responsibility to tell you that the Green Party of San Diego meets every month. The fourth Saturday of every month, in fact, at 11:30 a.m. at the Joyce Beer Center located at 3900 Vermont Street. I'm going to say that again because that's so important. The Green Party of San Diego meets the fourth Saturday of every month at 11:30 a.m. at the Joyce Beer Center, 3900 Vermont Street. And for those of you who are really raring to go, how many of you are like ready to say, you know what, David, I'm going? Anybody? I got a couple of hands here. Look around, look around, look around. See that? See that? All right, so this is a good indication that we're doing some organizing. On March 25th, we'll know if we have because you'll actually be there. That means March 25th, y'all. So we're going to pass around the sign-up sheet, and I want to be very clear. If you want to get information, please sign up. And if, like me, you have bad handwriting, slow down, right? There's nothing as an organizer more painful than not being willing to and able to read a sign-up sheet. So please take your time to sign up. And if you're really ready to get down like James Brown, if you're really ready to go, check where it says volunteer, right? So if you just want information, sign up. If you're ready to go like y'all did, I feel you, right? Sign up and sit that check mark, all right?
Just so you know, it's the same list you might have signed up at the beginning, so if you signed up at the door, just pass it along.
And so I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to give me the opportunity to try to raise some money for the Green Party of San Diego. And it is my distinct pleasure now to bring back to the stage the keynote speaker for tonight, the woman who should have been President of the United States, Dr. Jill Stein.
I just want to give a big thank you to David Cobb for having paved the way as our candidate for president in 2004. And if you think it's hard to run for president, that's nothing compared to being the campaign manager for president. So I want to just give a big shout out and thank you, David. So we're just going to open it up for your questions, for your comments. What do we have? Maybe a half hour, something like that. So if you can give us your thoughts, try to confine your question to about a minute so that we can get everybody in. And then we're going to take a big selfie, okay? So don't leave before we get our selfie.
So shall we try having people ask questions from the audience? And if it doesn't work, they'll come to the mic, or would you like to start with the mic?
What's your preference? What do you want? You come to the mic. Okay, come to the mic so we can really hear you. So just come and line up, and we'll just... Okay, so maybe just the first two people, and then we'll give you numbers, okay? So I guess the rules are that we have to stay seated, we can't block the aisles. So we got two people here, and then if you can just take your seats again, but here's your number. 3, okay? 4, 5 in the blue hat, 6 in the yellow jacket, and who else? Okay, 7 in the red shirt. And then 8 over here, 9 in the back in the checkered shirt, 10 in the gray shirt, 11 up here, and in the blue shirt, 12, and 13 in the gray shirt. All right, that'll get us started, and then we can do another round if we have time. Okay, and I will try to keep my responses to a lightning round so we can get a lot of questions in. All right, and tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm from here.
Great.
I wrote it down because I tend to babble. So
Okay.
I want to thank you for this and your persistence and giving us an opportunity to vote our conscience. that have popped up or researched, like the Black Bloc and the witch movement that was researched from the 60s that use anonymity and costume to do a more message-based rather than, I guess, is it productive, do you think, or is it something where, maybe we should be more visible to give it more of a face?
Great. Yeah, really good questions. And first, let me just agree that this fear politics, not being able to vote your values, it delivered everything we were afraid of. So just, I think you all get it, that this politics of fear is a trap, and we need to forget the lesser evil, because all the things that the lesser evil was supposed to bring to us, all the reasons to vote for the lesser evil, because you didn't want the bailouts, the meltdown, the deregulation of Wall Street, the attack on immigrants and our civil liberties, and all the rest of it, we've gotten just by the droves. So we say reject the lesser evil, fight for the greater good, like our lives depend on it. That's the bottom line. And in terms of getting out in the street, whether it's as witches or something else, there's only so far you can go in the street, because the press can always choose not to cover you. It takes a lot of work to be out in the street. You got to get out in the street repeatedly, and that's what they were doing in East Germany to bring down the East German government. That's what the South Koreans were doing. We need to be out in the street. We need to be working in the movements, whatever they are, whether they're anonymous. And there's a lot to be said for a festival and costumes and all that, and making this fun and creative, and expressing our hearts through our arts. We got to do all that, but we have to do more. We also need to organize, and I think there's just no substitute for creating those organizations that get us out with an agenda. If you are anonymous and you don't have a demand, you'll be written off. Like Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We need to be getting together, deciding what are our key demands right now, and how do we move forward. The Climate March, for all it was worth, back in 2014, brought out, like 500,000 people in New York, but it didn't have a demand. And it just kind of came and went. And we don't have time to do that. We need to be really clear about what it is that we need, and to put that agenda together in a way that binds us together, that is unifying. And for me, that's what People, Planet, and Peace over Profit is. It sort of is that ultimate agenda made really simple about why we're here. And then you can break it down into the particular issues that are relevant to that particular fight. But like David was saying, we got to be willing to take power. It's not enough to be a social movement when when there have been social transformations, the abolition of slavery, the labor movement, the women's movement. These movements have had a political counterpoint and a political voice. And that's what gets us to critical mass and really begins to turn things around. And that's what we need now. No window dressing, no halfway measures. We really need transformational change. Thank you.
One of the things that's bothering me in this election is the attitude about violence against women. We know that a man who admitted to grappling a woman's parts ended up as president of the United States. And I went to 2 recent town halls with Democrats and asked them about that well, don't you consider that a crime, and da-da-da-da-da. And they were like, well, that's not really gonna hold water. We're gonna do other things. We're gonna use other means. One of the things I'm getting tired of is people saying, well, let's not worry about the violence against women until we do all this other stuff. And I wanted to know where your priority was on that issue, because I see it as an urgent issue.
Yes.
It's increasing, and it's a large amount of women.
It is, and I want to agree with my indigenous brother, Eric, who said that, if the women are not leading the way, it's not going to work. So violence against women is part of oppression against women. And violence is physical, it's domestic, it's economic, it's cultural, it's gender violence. We We need full liberation for women, full equality for women. That's how we're going to get to a society that works for all of us. So absolutely, it's critical. We need to be shoring up defenses for women. We need places where women can go when they're threatened with domestic violence. We need domestic violence programs. We need to ensure that as part of anti-bullying programs in our schools, we have anti-gender violence programs as well. We need wage equality for women, and we need full equality across the board. We need health care for everyone, and that includes for women, including full reproductive care, which should be a choice between a woman and her health care providers and should not be the business of the state. So all of these are things that, you're absolutely right. We need to stand up for. Women need to be leading the way forward. Tell us your name and where you're from again.
My name is Elizabeth Patel, and actually I belong here.
Let's see, yeah, come closer to your microphone.
Yes, my name is Elizabeth Patel, and I'm from the Green Party USA.
Sean, can you move Yeah. There we go.
All right.
All right. Now we got
Yeah,
you.
my name is Elizabeth Patel, and I'm with the Green Party USA, and we are actually a regional Green Party, and I have worked with this Green Party, and my question actually is not about that, but about this new party that the Bernie supporters are starting. Actually, you don't know what's going to happen. I do not think that's a bad thing, because there's probably a lot of people, especially Democrats, progressive Democrats, who are not going to lead the Democratic Party to go to the Green Party. However, they may lead the Democratic Party to go to that party. And I don't think, again, it's a bad idea to have more than one alternative party. And I think hopefully that, people can work together. And I have just kind of another comment, and I'm concerned actually about all these groups demonstrating, and that there is no coordinating group doing anything, at least that people know that this group is doing something on this day, and et cetera, et cetera. And also, the other problem with that is I feel that the Democrats are taking advantage of that.
Okay, great. Let me just stop you there, just because we're trying to keep it to about a minute. But those are great questions, and I think you've kind of answered your question here as you've kind of discussed this, because the Democrats taking advantage, I think, is sort of the lesson that is being taught by history right now. Bernie and his supporters did everything right, except by trying to create a revolution inside of a counter-revolutionary party. And what happened to Bernie got sabotaged. The Democrats will let you do the right thing until you start succeeding, and then they will pull out their kill switch. Like they not only did to Bernie, they did to Dennis Kucinich, they did to Jesse Jackson before him. They've been doing it for a long time. So I'm just worried that we're out of time. And you saw this again at the DNC, where they refused to ban corporate money, they refused to bring in Keith Ellison. They basically voted down every reform thing there. So it's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 1,000 times, shame on me. I don't know about you, but I run out of patience, and I just run out of the ability to kind of keep going through that downward spiral while we are going over the waterfall. We just don't have time to allow ourselves to be led around the nose. And Bernie's a man, but he started a movement. And he said that movement is a movement. He said, that's not me, that's a movement. And I just really thank our lucky stars that there are so many in that movement who have refused to go back into that dark night where movements go to die inside the Democratic Party. It's just the way it is. And the door is still open to Bernie Sanders to give up on that abusive relationship. It's like being in an abusive relationship. At some point you just got to move on. And I think we just have to start winning races, and then we're going to see a lot of people change their minds. And the question is whether you are starting the bandwagon, or you're just waiting to join the bandwagon. I think in this room we got people who are starting that bandwagon, and we're going to see a lot of people come on board. Our numbers are growing by the day, so let's just keep it up. You rock.
Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Allier. I'm from City Heights, San Diego, and first grade public school teacher. And I am terrified about the environment. I can't sleep. I'm looking for some very specific examples of just the most effective things that we can do right now. Just a few. Like, what can we go home and do right now to fight fossil fuel and climate change so that we can sleep better, because we're so scared.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate that question, and I'll say that I was in that place myself when I had my big wake up, which was some years ago. I sort of changed my I wouldn't say my career pathway exactly. I sort of long gave up on internal medicine. I now practice political medicine because it's the mother of all illnesses. And we gotta fix that illness if we're gonna fix all the other stuff that's literally killing us. And I'd say what enables me to sleep at night, and there was a time there when actually I was sort of in my discovery mode, learning about basically how sick we are and how sick we've made our children. That for me was like my big wake-up call. And then when I learned about climate change, that was kind of like going through it again. But for me, the big shocker was learning that we've poisoned the planet in a way that's not easy to fix, and that we've got an epidemic of cancer and asthma and mercury and lead and the neurological sequelae of that. And we're paying an incredible price. Half of all Americans right now have a chronic disease of one form or another. It's not that way in other countries. It's really quite shocking. So for me, I was like really depressed about this until I sort of changed my life around. So the main thing became fighting it. And it became building a coalition to effectively fight it. And I found that was just so exhilarating and so empowering that it no longer, the insomnia went away, because the fight is so uplifting and so affirmative of who we are in the world that we're creating. It doesn't mean that it's an easy fight, and it doesn't mean that it's a slam dunk, but there's just something really comforting about shifting your universe so that your universe really is about building that resistance and building the transformation. And for me, having worked in many different areas of the fight and many different areas of environment and health, I have to say the really unifying thing is how we unify, because it's in that unity that we have the power to change all of it. If we tunnel down on any one thing, that may be really important where we are, but we can't lose that coalition building, because it's the coalition that's going to save our lives. It's the coalition that's going to get us out of here alive and save the planet for our kids. And as a medical doctor, I've had lots of encounters with serious illness and death, and just like helping people. What do you do in that panic moment when maybe you're going to die? And how are you going to fight this? And and we've all had that experience with our families too. What do you do when you're looking your mortality in the face? And what has been my experience, in dealing with that at a personal or professional family level, the whole, across all of it, it's really, it's like your meet the maker moment, meet your maker moment, whether, that's a deity or a nature or whatever it is, but you gotta get really honest with yourself about what it is that you're doing here, and, and connect with that. And just by really investing yourself in that struggle and in that fight, you kind of get grounded. You get grounded, and you know that you're taking risks. I mean, like at Standing Rock, people are taking their lives in their hands by standing up. And we're all kind of taking our lives. Our lives are already in the target hairs right now in a very big way. And how do we diminish that risk? How do we, optimize our chances for survival here? It's by, it's not by pushing the panic button. It's not by, throwing caution to the wind and partying until until we go down with the ship. It's about fixing the ship. And we can actually fix that ship, and it's really important to know that we can fix that ship. We have the numbers to do it, we have the power to do it, and it's all about harnessing that power. So for me, the best medicine here against insomnia and all the rest of it is really working to build a political coalition that can actually get the job done. And it may be focusing on one race or another race, but that's really where we get traction. And we pry open the political system and we can turn this around quickly. That's where our efforts are really magnified. So that's my long-winded advice on what to do on that, on that score. What do you do when you're looking your mortality in the race, in the face? Because we're all kind of doing that right now. Thank you.
If you need some reassurance tonight, Google Richmond Progressive Alliance.
Yes.
Imagine something like that in San Diego because we're working on it. Richmond
Yeah, that's
Progressive Alliance.
awesome. Yes. Great example.
Hi, Dr. Jill.
Hi.
My name is Michael Brackley. I live locally here in Hillcrest. And I'd like to start by expressing my appreciation and giving us all a chance to express our appreciation, not only for your running, but after the election, you're forcing the 3 states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania to re-examine the vote count. And I was very pleased to be able to support you in that. Thank you.
So much.
Voter suppression is, in my opinion, a huge issue that we need to deal with. I'd rather see the election invalidated than have Trump impeached myself. And I hope that your work will help us do that. But that's not my question. My question has to do with the voting process. I totally agree with you, as you said, that's where we need to start. And we need to start with something like ranked choice voting that gives us an opportunity to vote for whom we actually want. And now comes the however. However, I'm afraid that ranked choice voting is not the right way. The research that I've done indicates that ranked choice voting actually supports the 2-party system. And I don't know if you're familiar with that research, and we obviously don't have time to talk about it right now. So my question for you is, will you please look into the research on this? Because I totally agree with you. We don't have time to screw around now. We don't have time to make the wrong choice in this matter. I will finish by saying, just as there is a wonderful project in Colorado about ranked choice voting happening, there's a wonderful project afoot right now in Oregon using a new form of score voting. Score voting together with instant runoff voting, not including the ranking part, just an automatic runoff part in addition to the score voting. And that, to me, is what really holds the promise. Because that way we get not only to rank our choices, but to actually score them, to rate them for exactly what we think people are worth as candidates.
Great, thank you. Thank you. And I'll just say that ranked choice voting is one of several reforms. It's used many places around the world and around the country, and people are pleased with the results that they get. People know that there are problems. There's no perfect voting system. And the other 2 systems that are usually put up there with ranked choice, so one is score voting and the other one is approval voting, they're actually not used in elections. Score voting is used in the Olympics, for example, but it's not actually used in elections. So we don't quite have the track record with them to know where they fall down. But I think we don't have to have just one solution. We could be at at a moment right now where we're trying several different forms of voting. And maybe we'll talk more afterwards.
My question for you is, will you please look into it?
Yes, absolutely, right, absolutely. We should look into it, and from what I've heard, there's enough reason here to start experimenting with other voting systems as well. And it's not like you only change it once and then it's a done deal. You know, voting systems are things that we should be examining, and and we should be able to evolve and improve our voting systems. So, point well made. So, thank you. And by the way, the recount lives on. It's now living on in the courts. So we're fighting court cases that are still looking to examine the vote and the software and the machines and find out exactly what happened.
Okay, so we didn't set the ground rules very clearly at the beginning. We mentioned sort of rapid response, rapid question answering. So please, when you come up for your question, get to your question and give Dr. Stein a chance to respond.
Okay. And maybe if you can give us, Sean, a little time when we get to that 1 minute point, and then you give me about as much time so that we keep this going. Great.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
My name is Eugenia Cutler, and I'm originally from Mexico. I was an illegal alien, and I'm very proud to say it. And I'm very happy that they don't talk about illegal aliens anymore, but undocumented undocumented residents, which I think is wonderful, and we all need to say that.
Undocumented Americans. Yes.
Well, you need to be a citizen. But anyway, it's so I became a citizen as soon as I could to vote for the second time Clinton, and after that I became a Green Party member. I was very disappointed, but there wasn't much going in the Green Party, so I became an independent, so I could vote any way I wanted to. I am joining the Green Party now.
All right.
I have a request. I passed people signing sheets for healthcare for all in California. I don't know, many of you I saw signed it. I don't know where the signing sheet is. Please don't stop it. People have been stopping it. Please continue signing it, and please pass it on and then bring it to me when it's finished.
Great.
I don't
Thank you.
And a fast question, just a question.
Real quick.
How will we get to get the system to change? Because
Yes.
the system has to change. We all want Trump out. How?
Yes. Okay. That's the big change. So let me just say, I think we're not going to know exactly, but I think we're doing the right things, and we need to keep doing what we're doing. The secret is not to go away and to recognize that by getting out in the street, by beating him back on the Muslim ban 2.0, by beating him back on Michael Flynn, by beating him back on his appointment to the Department of Labor, by the legal cases that are being filed against him, by his approval numbers that continue to go down. They were rock bottom to start with, and they've gone downhill from there. By getting out the word about what Trump care is. It's not health care, it's wealth care. And his supporters are having a big wake-up right now as they discover it wasn't about them. It wasn't about the neglected Americans. It was really about the billionaires and the blowhards. So we got to just keep doing what we are doing and never doubt for a minute that we do have the power, and we just got to keep standing up and using it. Particularly, let me tell you, in addition to being out in the streets, we need to challenge in local races, because it's by winning office that we begin to actually build our power. Help out with Kenneth Mejia's race right now. It's Mejia, number 4, Congress.com. Kenneth Mejia, who's running for Congress in LA in an election that he can actually win. Same is true for Sherry Honkala, and that's Sherry, C-H-E-R-I, 197. She's running in the 197th district.com. She's running in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, for state rep. To replace a Democrat who was convicted of fraud, the second state rep in a row from that district to be knocked out of office with a fraud conviction. And then the Democratic candidate in the race was knocked off the ballot for not living in the district. They keep going down and down to the bottom of the barrel. Now they threw Sherry off the ballot for unjust reasons, but it's a race now of the write-ins in a district that has had it with being thrown under the bus by Democrats. This is a real winnable race by throwing money into the pot, and again, it's Sherry, CHERI 197. That race is in 6 days. They're getting out their supporters right now. Small contributions really add up across the country. You can also help with phone banking. For those who are having insomnia about the state of the country, this is the treatment. This is the therapy, is fighting back strategically in races where we can actually break through and fire that shot across the bow that we are coming and we are not going to be stopped. So warning, we got 15 minutes, so I will try to shorten my answers. And
I'm so glad that you are here in San Diego. It's my first opportunity to see you in person. My name is Marie Johnson. I live in La Mesa, and somebody was asking or commenting on not having a central location where different events are posted. Activist San Diego has a community calendar. San Diego Free Press has a community calendar, and Michael Moore has one. Please go to that so that people around the country will see what's happening in cities and states everywhere, and you know that you're not alone. I would request that when you talk about fossil fuels and how damaging they are, that you talk about alternative jobs sooner. That came pretty late in your presentation tonight, and I feel for the coal miners and loggers that were being blocked from cutting old growth forestation. These are people who are hurting. They don't understand the sacrifices that my father told me about as a union organizer. Union members putting themselves in front of the Pinkertons who shot and beat them up. So that's a real concern for them when there is not talk right away about the fact that we are so innovative. We can provide alternative jobs for them. So I'm wondering, have you gone into coal country, and if you have, what you're hearing the miners say, and then how you're addressing it?
Yes. So I've had more discussions actually with oil workers and frac workers and people in the refineries. And I also have I do a radio show for America's Workforce Radio, which is actually the construction unions. So these are not people who've traditionally been friendly to green things, but we've had this ongoing dialogue now for about 2 years about that very thing, about the incredible green jobs. And I'll tell you, from the refineries to the construction worker unions, they are hungry for jobs that are safe for them. Because as you point out, no one is more, the sacrificial lamb here than the workers in the fossil fuel industry, whether it's coal, whether it's oil, whether it's fracking. These are the people whose lives are really on the line. Their risk of dying goes up 700% just from walking onto a fossil fuel job. From equipment collapses, from getting crushed in a mine, to explosions and fires and motor vehicle crashes. And they know it. I was in Houston during the oil refinery strikes there 2 or 3 years ago, and they were so excited about this idea of green jobs that are safe jobs and healthy jobs. New York State passed a policy. They're phasing out coal, but they are guaranteeing jobs and benefits for the coal workers. And that's what we need to do. We need to clarify this is not about more sacrifice for people who've already sacrificed too much. This is about guarantee that you are going to have a good wage job, and it's a job that's going to make you healthy at the same time that it makes your community, your family, and the planet healthy.
Can you give number 7 and 8? I'll put the mic somewhere over in this area, 7 and 8.
Number 7 and 8.
You've forgotten who
Or
you
9
are.
or 10?
There we go. Oh, we got out of order. Number 6, and if you're number 8, please join me up at front.
Hi, Dr. Stein. Thanks for coming to San Diego. My name is James Hansen-Trey. I'm born and raised. Hi, Dr. Stein. Thank you for coming to San Diego. My name is James Hansen-Trey. I'm born and raised in San Diego. Live in City Heights now. Try to make this quick. I strongly suspect everything was rigged in the general election. The so-called official tally attributed only 1% of the vote going to the Green Party. But this didn't make sense to me on a gut level because 13 million people voted for Bernie. So based on my own surveying of online discussions, a very large chunk of those voters were angry with the DNC for their skullduggery. And so I feel on a gut level that a much larger percentage of voters actually did vote for you, but due to the vagaries of the process, electronic voting particularly, those votes may have been stolen for Clinton or Trump. So in your opinion, is the actual method by which our general elections proceed, i.e. electronic voting or tallying the votes, rigged or tampered with? And if so, what tactics can we take to rat out the corruption? Does the Green Party have plans to directly attack the mechanics of the election process, moving for the barring of electronic voting or vote aggregation in favor of paper balloting or supervised hand counting?
Great. So it sounds like we needed a recount, and we still need a recount. And what we are calling for in that recount, if you can't recount the vote, you have no way to ever hold the election system accountable. You have no transparency, you have no accountability. That's not what democracy is about. In other democracies around the world, they have automatic recounts whenever the race is very close, or if there are other indicators. All 3 states were extremely close, and in fact, the vote went the opposite of what the exit polls showed, and the votes also showed the opposite of what voters said prior to going into the poll. So it raised all the red flags, and what we learned in the recount was that the system is very defensive about being recounted. It absolutely refuses, which only raises, the question level even bigger and higher. So we're still fighting it out in the courts. There have been some states that have begun to do the right thing. California, for example, got rid of its electronic voting machines. We should have paper ballots, which are either hand counted or they are counted in these optical scanners where we are doing automatic audits to basically be sure that the scanners are doing their work correctly. So we need to be very skeptical about the system. There's no security built into it. There are no security features in this thing. They are hackable, they are tamperable, they are open to machine and human error. So this is not the voting system we deserve. This fight is going on. Mainstream media and the political establishment was very up in arms that we were able to raise so much money so quickly over the Thanksgiving weekend because Americans want a voting system we can trust. We will keep fighting. Stay tuned. If you go to Jill2016.com, if you're not already on that email list, get on it because we're putting out updates just about every week to let you know what's going on with the recount and the rest. Tomorrow I'm actually going to Wisconsin. We're holding a conference in Wisconsin. They're issuing a long report about what were the findings. We expect to have an ongoing lawsuit in Wisconsin as well as in Pennsylvania. So it is not over by any means, even though the media would like you to think that it's over. It's absolutely not. It's only just begun. Thank you.
Give the website again.
It's Jill2016.com. We have a recount page there. And you can sign up for our email newsletter there, and you'll get automatic updates.
Hi, good evening, Doctor. My name is Julian Denani. I'm from Hemet, California. And I wanted to, first off, give thanks to you and the Green Party. One of the things that made me really attracted to you during the presidential campaign was during the Green Party convention that the party allowed Julian Assange to speak over there. And the reason is because government transparency and the need to protect whistleblowers for doing the right thing. I'm very appreciative for the sacrifice that Edward Snowden has made on our behalf. And information education that he continues to provide. So with that said, with the revelations of the Vault 7, what is a very, for like we as everyday like people, what are what is a bottom-up legislative approach that we can do to preserve our privacy and to like really fight to like take that back and really dismantle mass surveillance and really get the federal government to return to more traditional and more effective targeted surveillance?
Exactly. And, you know, in the words of, I think it was Benjamin Franklin, that if we sacrifice privacy in the name of security, we will wind up losing them both. So, you know, we cannot, I think he used the word liberty, if we sacrifice liberty in the name of security, you know, but it's that basic concept that we don't become more secure by spying on people and by invading our privacy and by creating an all-knowing big brother. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if we have a big brother who, you know, is in on our every waking moment and everything that we're doing, who's capable of turning on our iPhones and listening in on us and capable of turning on our video screens and watching us, you know, what kind of a world are we? So, you know, we need to stand up for our civil liberties, we need to stand up for whistleblowers, we need to stand up for Julian Assange and for Edward Snowden, who are making us more secure and more just societies and more democratic. And, you know, I think the case in point here is with those revelations with Vault 7 that Assange just released, which were leaked by security contractors or whoever they were. You know, what we've learned now is that the CIA is capable of using anybody else's fingerprints, essentially, and blaming anything on the Russians or whoever they want to blame it on. So it's added a whole new layer of complexity to this very weird new McCarthyism, new Cold War, Russia bashing that's going on. So it's really exciting. And then you have Julian Assange, who's sort of become a new hero for all these private companies who now have the benefit of finding out where the holes are in their security systems so that they can actually fix them. Unlike, you know, the U.S. security agencies that were supposed to be telling the companies where their vulnerabilities are, and they haven't been doing that. So this fight is going to go on for a while. You know, I think we need a cyber an international, a world treaty to ban cyber warfare is one thing that we need to do. We need to stop this international spying on each other, and we need to be able to stand up for our civil liberties and stop this right here. And it's part of that larger agenda. We need laws, we need judicial protections, and above all, we need to keep shining light on it and you know, and fighting our way forward to the security that we deserve, real security. And that means upholding our privacy in order to have that real security. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Quick time check. 30 minutes left before 9 and 3 more questions. So
Okay,
this is
great.
ultra rapid.
All right, lightning round.
Before I ask my question, I just want to say real quick that I've been Green since I was 15 years old, and I supported you in 2012 where I could vote, and it was an absolute honor to cast my vote for you in November. But it's great seeing you tonight. But you mentioned resistance, and a lot of people are complaining that things are really divided right now, but I see it as it's really beautiful that so many people are awake and engaged in the political process and speaking up for what they care about, when before they might not have been. And like, of course, that's a great way to get things done, like with the Women's March and everything, but besides resistance and opposition, like, what would you say, like, in terms of, like, what can we hope for that they can do for us? Because, like, they did get us out of the TPP, but other than that, like, it just seems every single decision they're making, every person they're appointing, it's just, it couldn't possibly be worse. Like, even with Common Core, like, that was something in the campaign trail. He agreed with you, he agreed with Bernie, and then now he has Betsy DeVos, who was aligned with the people who created it. So, like, what would you say is the hope that we can have for working with them and getting the change that we need from this atrocious administration?
You know, I think in the words of Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. I think we're not likely to get a lot by asking nicely. You know, I think we have to just stand up, and we have to be willing to sit in, to to lock down, to massively get out in the streets and do what we need to do, like our lives depend on it. It's like, take a lesson from what happened under Richard Nixon in the 1960s and the 70s. This isn't rocket science. This is about standing up and standing together like the people at Standing Rock. That fight is not over. That's the kind of courage that we need. And it's important to recognize that we are fighting our way forward. We did stop, the privatization of the internet. We did shut down San Onofre. They want you to think that you are powerless. We are not powerless. We are powerful the minute we stand together and we refuse to back down. So this is about our getting together and doing it. What's that?
Do you think there is anywhere we can find common ground with them?
Well, I think they are going to realize that the American people have a lot of common ground, that we demand a democracy, we demand jobs, we demand living wages, we demand health care as a human right, that we demand an end to student debt and to free public higher education. I think that's where our common ground is. I think they represent really a predatory fringe. And this kind of political system is a scam, and we should not for a minute think that that's where the power is. I think that is a usurpation of power. It is a pretense of power. Power really lies with us. I think power out of the the depth of your pockets, power out of having big corporate funding is not real power, and it should not be respected, and we do not need to compromise with destructive power that is really throwing us under the bus. We have the power.
Hi, my name is Edith. I'm from Oceanside, and tonight I came with my son Navarro.
Great, hi.
And my question is, in a few years or in a year and a half, he is going to college. He is very willing, and he has all the enthusiasm to someone professional.
Uh-huh.
And that is my big concern.
Yes.
How the Green Party will unite efforts to work with everyone in the community to fight for free college, free tuition for college.
Yes, great. I couldn't agree with you more. The question is, how can we get together that Ibi's son, Navarro, is going to college in a year and a half. How can we work together to get free college, which we should have? And I'll just tell you, in San Francisco, they just established 2 years of free college. And that's what we need to do. And we need to do that especially by running candidates who are running on the strength of that movement. There is an entire generation and their parents, who are being thrown under the bus on student debt and the cost of higher education. So we have the numbers to be winning office for city council, for state legislature, for school committee. And even if you don't control the cost of college, you have enormous weight and credibility to then go to the legislature to say, this is what we need to do. It pays for itself. We did it in the 60s and in the 70s. This used to be how the California college system worked, and in many states across the country. So we need to bring that back, and just by standing up on the power of that issue, we can win office and then be more powerful in demanding that we make that so. And I'd suggest go to your local Green Party meeting and make sure that your chapter is organizing on that issue and that you're running candidates on that issue. It's in our hands. Yes?
Hi Jill, my name is Tracy Childs and I'm from Poway. Thank you so much for coming, and this is really great to see the excitement. And I just wanted to let you know that when I hear you speak, it's like I'm running for president, or that's the way I felt. I'm so happy to be able to vote for you. I have held these beliefs for a long time. But my question is about the Green Party in general and your platform. You, of course, we all know it's a crisis, the climate change. And, you know, we've known about the science for all these years about our diet and how it affects the climate. Something we do 3 times a day. And the beef industry and the dairy industry really contribute a lot. And if you've seen Cowspiracy, the movie Cowspiracy, you know that. Have you seen the movie?
No, not yet.
Oh, you gotta
It's
see
on my
it.
list.
Oh, you have to see it. It's so important.
Yeah.
And you know, the science says that 51% of what's happening to our climate is coming from animal agriculture. So I just want to know about the platform of the Green Party on this really crucial issue that is so important to us. It's something that we can all do easily, is to reduce the amount of animal products or eliminate what we eat.
Yes.
Absolutely. I teach whole food plant-based cooking and nutrition, and so it's near and dear to my heart because I help people know that it's delicious, not a problem to do it. So,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
All
I
right.
couldn't agree more.
Oh, thank you.
It's a health issue. It's a climate issue. It's a humane animal husbandry issue. It's kind of, you know, ironic that when we institutionalize cruelty to animals, that it comes back to hurt us. That if we are hurting animals, their nutritional profile changes in a way that really hurts us too. So, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for humane and organic animal husbandry. That is not factory farms, not having CAFOs, etc. But there's also a lot to be said from just reducing the, you know, the amount of animal products in our diet, which are not good for us, not good for the planet as a whole, not good for our water supplies all around. It's a win-win to be moving to sustainable and largely plant-based agriculture and diet. And so I agree with you completely.
Hi, my name is Alex Tannen. I'm originally from San Francisco, and you're the only presidential candidate I've ever voted for or made a contribution to, so I'm really excited to be here. My sentiments are similar to the lady who just spoke before me. I'm vegan largely for environmental reasons, and I am really curious. I want to ask a really pointed question, like what is the Green Party stance on the animal agriculture industry, because they do contribute significantly to climate change.
Yes.
You mentioned methane; they're like the largest contributor to methane. So, what is your take on that? What kind of actions do you think we could take against them?
Oh yeah. Well, as part of our Green New Deal, you know, our Green New Deal would end CAFOs. It would end industrial agriculture and animal husbandry, and we would move to a sustainable local food system, largely plant-based and organic and sustainable. So there's just no place for it for industrial animal agriculture. There's just no place for it in a sustainable world, and there's not in the Green Party platform either. So I think, do you, yeah.
That was the end of the list that we had. There are more people, but
we're out of time.
Running out of time, yeah.
Great. All right. So remind us again when the next meeting of the Green Party is here in San Diego. It is.
It's every fourth Saturday.